What's going on, guys? In today's video I thought I'd go through the car build itself and going from when I bought it at pretty much completely stock to the point of where it is today. So I picked the car up in 2013, I believe it was August 2013, and I drove the car stock for a while, getting used to it, enjoying it, and in about December of 2014 is really when I put the car up and decided to build the initial turbo setup on it. With that build, I decided to build the motor as well. I actually ended up selling the stock motor out of it that was running well and built a motor that was already blown. So the motor build itself has CP pistons, BC rods, and the block is a closed deck with AEBS sleeves. It's also got the copper O-rings for a better head seal, and the head was fully built as well. So here you'll see the motor on the stand. Decided to paint it black while I had it out of the car already, and then eventually got it together. This is the first time I'd actually done anything like this, so it took me a little while, but not too long. The turbo setup is an inline pro manifold with a 44mm wastegate. Has a BorgWarner S366, has a .91 AR and a T4. So that setup worked pretty well for me. I mean, the car was very fast and a blast to drive, but I ended up making 533 wheel horsepower and about 330 foot-pounds of torque on a dyno. That was tuned by Evans Tuning. Had great success, a great time down there. He really knows what he's doing. So after I had the car like that for a little while, I decided, I was sick of revving the car out to about 5,000 just to get power out of it, and I was sick of how laggy the setup was. And I know I could have sized the turbo better, but I knew nothing out there would really be exactly what I was looking for other than, say, like a VA swap. And even though that's been done plenty of times, I wanted to be different. I wanted to do something unique and different, and that's when the compound setup started. So here you'll see when I got both turbos in, it's the EFR 6258 and the S475 96mm turbine housing T6 frame with a 1.32 AR. From there, the first thing I got started in on was the manifold for the small turbo. I built a custom T4 twin scroll manifold to feed the EFR turbo. This project was the first time I'd ever done any fabricating. Things didn't come out the prettiest or the best, but they've gotten the job done so far, and I think they turned out pretty well for the first time doing anything like this. So I'm pretty happy with the results so far, cross my fingers. So to clean things up a little bit, I took the intake manifold off and shaved off all the vacuum ports off the top, a lot of the little mounts on the runners themselves, just to give it a nice clean look. And after powder coating it white, I think it came out super clear. Another thing we did for the intake manifold was add a secondary fuel system. You'll see on there we added 4 more fuel injector ports, and that's for the secondary fuel system that has VP M1. Now that the small turbo is mounted up, it was time to fabricate the crossover pipe. This was the pipe that goes on the exhaust side. It would be a down pipe essentially for your small turbo, and it would feed the large turbo. With how tight everything was fitting, I ended up having to go with starting to do some pie cuts on the crossover pipe, and you'll see throughout this I ended up going with pie cuts for a lot of the bends, just how tight I had to make them and how congested everything was in there. At this point the car's really starting to take shape. You can see where both turbos are mounted and how everything is kind of going to fit together and how everything's going to look. Then you have the downpipe that I made. Again, more pie cuts. It's a 4-inch downpipe coming off the S475, and then is reduced down to a 3.5-inch exhaust, and it's all open. There's no cats. There is a muffler on the end, but again, it's an open muffler. There's no restrictions in there. Even though the fabrication ended up being pretty complex and taking a while, it ended up getting pretty fun. It could be frustrating at times, especially how hot the summer was to do it in, but it was enjoyable to see a nice product come out at the end. In order to save some space up front, I utilized the Schmuck-Built tucked radiator and intercooler setup. This gave me much more room up front to have the big turbo and all the other piping. Due to the lack of space, I decided to have the wastegate mounted directly off the exhaust housing of the S475. Not only does that help me save space and locate things for me, but it also controls the boost level really well. It gives me great control of keeping the boost where I want and being able to bleed off enough airflow. Here you'll see the mock-up for my recirculation pipe. I'm not a big fan of open dump pipes. A lot of people like them, a lot of people don't. My goal for the car was being a street car and keeping it quiet, so naturally the recirculation pipe was for me. Some of the final fab work I had to do was the charge piping. The interstage charge pipe was pretty complex, but I got it to hook around the shock tower there and fit under the hood as well. My first attempt at the charge pipe for the small turbo going through the intercooler didn't end up working properly, and we needed to make it go over the top instead of going down through a lot of all those hot pipes. So I had first made up this panel in an attempt to control the secondary fuel injection setup to engage with VTEC. But while it did function properly and we could get it to work, it really didn't work as well, and we didn't have as much control as we wanted. So I ended up buying the secondary injector box from Honda to have full control of those other 4 injectors. At this point, we're ready to start it up for the first time and get a base map on it. So as you might see in this photo here, you can see the other charge piping that I was talking about. It had to get redone so that it could stay away from the heat from the manifold and from the downpipe and the crossover pipe. Now it was ready for the dyno for the first time. So initial tuning on the dyno took place now. We were at about 22 psi, making 450 horsepower and about 325 foot-pounds of torque. But as you can see, the concept's working properly. We have a really long, broad torque curve, which will make it a blast to drive on the street and much more responsive. I got the car back home after the initial dyno tuning, and we had a few things to work out and a few upgrades I wanted to make over the winter. Over the past winter, I fixed the oil leak that we had coming from the timing cover. That was a big headache, but was definitely needed. I couldn't have it just leaking oil. The other thing I did was add sound deadening material to make it more street driving friendly. It was a little more comfortable, a little quieter. And then the big upgrades were in the rear end. I put a Ford 8.8 IRS diff in there with 3.55 gears, some insane shafts, and Mickey Thompson street radials. At this point, I had a little painting done. I had the mirrors and my front bumper and lip painted, just because they had some damage and some sun fading on them. And then we were all together and ready to hit the dyno for the second time. Check in soon and I'll have a video of the dyno footage up from the most recent tuning that was done late April in 2017. Thanks for watching, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys soon.